Good evening. The hour of 6 p.m. having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pocket as you enter the meeting room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and comment on the agenda items under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Written comments from the public will be accepted at the city clerk's office until Tuesday at 1 p.m. I will call to order this regular meeting of the Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee and declare a quorum present. So thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We do have quite a lengthy agenda, and we are going to jump right in. I think our first item is the Kiwanis Club of Keene's request to use city property for the tree lighting ceremony. Do we have Liz Sayre here? Yes, fabulous. Welcome, ladies. Please state your names and addresses for the minute taker.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you very much. Is this on?
If the green light is on?
It is now. Good evening. Elizabeth Sayre, 290 Main Street, Keene.
Christine Klauk, 110 Arch Street, apartment 33 in Keene.
Great.
Good
Ladies,
evening.
wanna
Thank you
tell
for
us a little bit about your request.
Yes, thank you for inviting us this opportunity. We are here representing the Kiwanis Club of Keene to talk about our annual Kiwanis Keene tree lighting event, which is November 28th on Central Square. We've completed the city process. We've had protocol meetings with the city clerk, Public Works, Fire Department. I'm trying to remember who else Not the post office there.
Well, the board.
So we're ready to go. We have Santa coming this year. We are expecting to have the Cheshiremen provide some entertainment. Mrs. Claus will be there. We'll be reading "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," giving out candy canes to children, bells for children to ring when Santa comes. And it's a very, very community and family-friendly event. And we'd just like your continued support with it.
Great. Thank you so much for all of that. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Rebecca Landry, Deputy City Manager, attended the protocol meetings. She's not able to be with us this evening. And she reported back to me that they did go over their event and protocol was happy. As in the past, there will be plans to include staff from DPW, Keene Fire Department, and Keene Police Department to coordinate efforts to close Central Square and detour all traffic consistent with past practice. And they will have staff present throughout the event. Community Development is prepared to perform any necessary inspections as necessary for food, electrical, and electrical service. So they are in good shape, no real changes to the event, and protocol is happy with their application.
Okay, fantastic. Anyone have any questions from the committee? Councilor Jones?
Liz,
Yes.
welcome back to City Hall.
Thank you very much.
We miss you.
Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming back. Thank you for a report. I have no questions. This
Okay.
is
Well, thank
what we
you.
do every year.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Haas?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Liz and Christine, there was a question raised last year about perhaps some more coordination with downtown merchants. They had some specific requests that don't seem practical, but it might be good to reach out to some of them to see how they might promote their businesses at the same time as the Christmas tree lighting. So if you,
We do go in person to every single downtown merchant between now and the event, and we try and work with them as best we can. I'm only aware of one person who felt that the closing the roundabout affected her business, but her business is on the part of Main Street that is not closed.
yeah.
But we will try and accommodate everybody the best we can.
Yeah, I
We
would
do
hope
not
they-
discourage anybody from celebrating the holidays, any
No.
holiday.
I would
We
hope
like them
they-
all.
I hope they use it as an opportunity
Yes.
to become part of it and
Right.
do some special sales or something.
Right.
So, thank you.
Great.
My pleasure.
All right, anyone else? I would like to open it up to the public at this point. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Right, seeing none, I would ask for a motion. Counselor Williams.
Move to recommend that the Keene Kiwanis Club be granted permission to use downtown city rights-of-way on Friday, November 28th, 2025, to conduct the annual tree lighting festival conditional upon the following. The furnishing of a certificate of liability insurance in the amount of $1 million, naming the city of Keene as an additional insured. The signing of a standard revocable license and indemnification agreement. That the petitioner agrees to absorb the cost of any city services over and above the amount of city funding allocated to the event, and agrees to remit said payment within 30 days of the date of invoicing. That the agreed-upon footprint and layout for the event shall encumber Central Square, including the traveled portions of the road requiring the following road closures: Central Square, West Street at Central Square, Roxbury Street from west of the Hannah Grimes parking lot to Central Square, Washington Street from Vernon Street to Central Square, and Court Street from Winter Street to Central Square. That the actual event will be held from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., with the times for setup and cleanup to be established with city staff. That free parking will be granted under the provisions of the free parking policy for the following: use of spaces with dates, times, and locations to be determined in coordination with the parking division for volunteer parking during pre-event setup and post-event breakdown activities, and spaces within the event footprint on the day of the event. Said permission is granted subject to the attainment of any necessary licenses or permits and compliance with all laws, and compliance with any recommendations of city staff.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second? Motion by Counselor Williams, seconded by Counselor Jones. I know that PLD is famous for our lengthy motions. Do you guys have any questions on any of those items in there?
Do you?
No.
No, we're very happy with everything.
Okay, great. Anyone from the public have any questions? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous.
Thank you very much.
All right, welcome. Well, we still have to go to council next week for a full vote, but we're really excited to see you guys back.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 2 on our agenda this evening is relating to the endorsement of the City of Keens 2025 Comprehensive Master Plan, Resolution R-2025-32. And I believe we have Mary Brunner here with us tonight to go over it.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mary Brunner, Senior Planner. I do have a presentation for you tonight. Hopefully it'll show up on the screens. But I'm very excited to be here. I feel like this day has been a long time coming. For those of us who have been working on this project in the background, it's been going on for years. And so very excited to be here tonight. So yeah, I'll just dive right in. So these first two sections on the outline, the planning process and community vision, I'm going to do like a really quick flyover because the vision was already presented to you a little less than a year ago, I believe. So, and there is a vision report online that you can view that goes into it in a little bit more detail. And then really the heart of the document and the plan is the pillars and goals section, as well as the future land use section. So spend a little bit more time on those and then end with implementation and next steps. So this process started when you, as the City Council, approved a budget for the project. And we then went right to work on hiring a consultant team. We ended up working with a consultant team led by Future IQ, which is a small but mighty firm based in Minnesota, and they were supported by an economic development firm, JS&A, as well as a national firm, WGI, for planning and GIS support. A really critical part of this process was the formation of the steering committee, so I just want to take a moment to recognize them for all of the hard work. They really played a critical role. The committee included a diverse array of perspectives. It included planning board members, city council members, the mayor, small and large business owners, local manufacturing, public health, higher education, the nonprofit sector, in particular Keene Housing, as well as a member of the Conservation Commission. And they met monthly throughout this 18-month process to guide the project and make some really key decisions. The first phase of the project was focused on data gathering as well as public engagement. Notable activities that were done include a community survey, which garnered 648 very detailed responses. It took people an average of 24 minutes to fill out that survey. And you can go to the project portal and view all of the responses. In addition, a think tank workshop was held in late May of 2024 with 50 community members, which is where it was a 2-day workshop where the framework for exploring the community's preferred future was really developed. And that was led by the consultant team, but all of the data used to develop that framework came from the participants of the workshop. Following that workshop, there were 17 visioning sessions. Then in August and September, the steering committee held a couple of roundtables to develop the strategic pillars. And then there was a big, what we called a future summit. It was really a big community event in a Saturday in early October where the vision and the draft pillars were presented to the larger community. And that was really the turning point, kind of the end of phase 1 and where we kicked off phase 2 of the project. And again, you can learn more about phase 1 of the project on the project portal. There's a community snapshot report, which provides demographic and economic data on the city of Keene. There's a think tank report, which goes into detail on the process for that think tank workshop that I mentioned, as well as the vision report and all of the responses to the surveys that we did. While the first phase was focused on identifying and building consensus around a shared community vision, the second phase was really focused on identifying the goals and action steps and priorities to make that vision implementable. To accomplish this, 6 task forces were created to do a deep dive into the pillars. They reviewed data, past work that the city and the larger community has done, reviewed case studies from other communities, and then used all of that information to develop goals and actions, which were then vetted by this project steering committee. And then we used a prioritization survey tool to help us prioritize those. That was sent out to the planning board, city council, the task force members, city leadership, and the steering committee. So I think that was everyone. And then finally, the draft plan, including the implementation matrix and a future land use map, were presented to the community at a second Future Summit event on June 3rd. So again, the main outcome of phase 1 was the development of an updated community vision. And really the goal with this effort was to develop a data-informed and consensus-based vision that reflects the shared values of the community. And there's the graphic sort of on the right side of this slide kind of describes the process that we use to try and accomplish that. And you can read about it more on the vision report. But just to summarize really briefly what the community vision is. So this was developed, again, using that scenario planning process, which I haven't gone into very much today, but is described in the think tank report. And what came out of that process, or what it revealed, was an overwhelming consensus from the community that change is desirable. So in other words, people in Keene do not want the status quo. People want to see Keene grow and be a safe, welcoming, and vibrant place to live with good living options, access to nature, and high-quality jobs. They also want to see the city proactively invest in infrastructure to support both new businesses as well as new residents, and invest in our neighborhoods and proactively go after housing solutions. And then this is related to the vision, but throughout the planning process, so starting from day one, these themes kept popping up. So we heard these from residents, the steering committee, and these are themes that are not necessarily specifically called out in the pillars. However, they're an essential part of what makes Keene Keene. So they kind of help define what our identity is. I think of them as the guiding principles for the plan. So while the vision is telling us where we're headed, where we're trying to go, these are more about the values that are essential for us to hold on to on the journey there. I don't know. So there's 7 of them. I'm not going to go into each of them, but hopefully they all resonate with you. And I know in the plan there's, I think, about 1 to 2 pages on each theme, sort of describing what we heard from the community and why it's so important to Keene. And then, so now getting to the heart of the plan, the Vision Keene 20 Forward strategic pillars were developed by the steering committee, as I mentioned, and leading up to that first Future Summit. And then they were further defined and refined through the strategic pillar task forces and by the steering committee. Those task forces met throughout January, February, and March of 2025. And these pillars are meant to provide a framework to apply best practices to key areas of focus, and they represent the major topic areas that underpin the preferred future for the community. And then I just included this slide to kind of help visually show like the way that the plan is structured. So again, there's that vision in the center. It's the centering vision for the plan, if you will, the aspirational picture of what the community hopes to achieve or become. Those connecting themes are surrounding the vision as the overarching themes and values that are embedded in the city's policies and practices. Then the pillars are the core foundational elements or principles that underpin the vision. And then within each pillar, there's a series of goals and actions to help achieve that vision. So. All right, so diving into the pillars, the first one is livable housing. From the very beginning with this project, housing has just come up as the top priority for everyone. That's probably the one topic that saw the strongest consensus across the board. And so we just heard over and over again about housing shortages and how it's impacting businesses, residents, families. And so this issue is really a combination of things. It's a problem with many different sources, and it's going to require many different solutions working in concert together. And it's coming from, there's a lack of available units, a mismatch between the types of units that people want and what's available. So this is a really important part of this plan. The goals underneath this pillar are to boost infill development and redevelopment, remove barriers to housing development where we can, to promote sustainable and healthy housing standards that align with the community's character, to increase the diversity of housing options and price points, and address the housing needs of all residents, current and future. The second pillar is thriving economy. With this one, we really heard from people that they want Keene to remain a place for both small businesses and entrepreneurs to be able to grow their businesses, as well as recognizing that large employers and key industries play a really key role in Keene and provide sort of that backbone stability to our local economy. So this pillar is really a blend of trying to support and promote small businesses and entrepreneurs, as well as make sure that our backbone industries stay and remain healthy. The goals underneath this pillar include encourage and recruit businesses in targeted industries, promote economic sustainability and resiliency, attract and grow Keene's businesses of all scales, from entrepreneurs to businesses that span internationally, strengthen Keene's position as an economic development leader, and foster an inclusive economy. The third pillar is connected mobility. So this pillar is really regionally focused. I think throughout the plan, there is this theme of, we're part of a larger region, but this is probably one of the pillars that's most regional. And that's just because Keene is the logical hub of our region. And as the region grows, especially the surrounding areas, it's going to become really important to build that connectivity, to make sure that there's an easy flow of workforce and residents to Keene. So some of the goals underneath this pillar include creating a connected and accessible network of multimodal transportation infrastructure, prioritizing vulnerable road users in infrastructure design, operations, and maintenance. And that is really aligned with the roadway safety action plan that you all may remember with the Vision Zero goals. The third one is to expand and promote environmentally sustainable mobility options that are convenient and attractive, and expand Keene's connectivity to support economic growth. The fourth pillar is probably my favorite. It's called Vibrant Neighborhoods. And this one is really about placemaking. So Keene is a community that has retained a lot of really important aspects of its culture and heritage, and has many different important neighborhoods and places. I think I've lived several different places in Keene, talked to many people in Keene that really just love the specific location where they live and its identity. Each little sub-neighborhood place in Keene is important, and people really connect with that. And so that's where this pillar kind of came from. And I think of it as being it's kind of like a microcosm of the larger plan almost. So in this pillar, people talked about mobility and connections and active transportation and placemaking and parks and all of that. So I think this one is really important. The goals underneath it are to support a built environment that encourages social connections and interactions, fostering community relationship building and collaboration, ensuring safe and efficient movement around town, fostering a high quality of life for all residents, and creating opportunities to encourage the creation of neighborhood businesses. The next one is adaptable workforce. This was another theme that came up very often when we were talking to folks, especially in the visioning sessions. That Keene's future competitive success will depend on its ability to both develop and retain a skilled and future-ready workforce. And the term adaptable workforce includes three fundamental facets. So the first is that adaptable workers have access to evolving skill development and credential pathways throughout all stages of life. The second is that we have adaptable institutions that offer flexibility and innovation in planning for future needs and responding to tomorrow's economy and workforce needs. And the third one is an adaptable community that focuses on livability, where residents can live in Keene, commute to their workplace, remain involved in the community, and contribute to the high quality, engaged community that we have today. So it's balancing those three facets that will help us build this future-ready and abundant workforce. The goals under this pillar are to attract talent to grow Keene's workforce, expand credential pathways and skill development opportunities, play a proactive role in de-siloing efforts, broadening partnerships, and increasing collaboration between partners that serve and support Keene's workforce, meet quality of life needs and reduce workforce barriers such as housing availability, childcare, and transportation, and then prioritize workforce and community health and wellness. And then last but not least is the flourishing environment pillar. And this pillar, it really does reflect a really deep underlying value and desire in the Keene community to be essentially a responsible community. There's a lot of discussion with this one around climate changes, adapting to shifting weather patterns. Keene has seen lots of flooding, so that came up quite a bit, but then people were also bringing up, increasing extreme heat and droughts, and other concerns are starting to come up as well. And so this one, I think there's kind of two pieces to it in my mind. There's the environmental stewardship and conservation lens, but then there's also this desire to be really proactive around renewable energy and just pursuing those solutions that will help us lead and be part of the solution. The goals underneath this pillar include promoting smart land use and development, prioritizing environmental protection and sustainability, integrating green technologies and best practices in Keens built environment, expanding community and infrastructure development, and strengthen Keens local leadership in collaboration to build resilience at the regional, state, and wider levels. Okay. The next section is on future land use. This one's a little bit shorter, I promise. So the city's future land use plan illustrates desired land use patterns given the aspiration goals and strategies expressed throughout the planning process. This uses generalized categories that we're calling character areas that are used to identify the desired character for existing and future areas of growth and change. And I do want to note here that the future land use map is not an official map or a zoning map. It doesn't follow parcel lines, and it does not specify what an owner can or cannot do legally with their property. However, it is used as a guide for policymaking, and it reflects previously adopted plans, current development trends, established land uses and zoning patterns, and it attempts to capture future desires. So there's 8 character areas in the plan, including downtown. Actually, I think this is a little bit dated, but it's downtown. There's, I think this is now just residential neighborhoods, downtown or neighborhood business nodes, corridor-oriented commerce, conservation and low-impact recreation, rural residential and working landscapes, and then the last one is production and innovation. And here's the future land use map again. And as you can see, it looks very organic and flowy. And that was an intentional decision, both to visually differentiate this map from the zoning map. So the zoning map does follow property lines. This one very clearly does not. But it's also meant to give future decision makers flexibility to allow for change to occur in line with community vision and goals. So I hope it accomplishes that. So are there, I guess? Yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to say here. Each character area is kind of defined more by the look and feel of the character area, and with less emphasis on the uses, if that makes sense. Because really what we heard throughout the whole process is that there's, to some extent, mixed uses are desired almost everywhere in Keene, except for maybe some of the more rural, recreational, or natural areas. But everywhere else, there seemed to be a desire for more of a mix of uses. So the character areas kind of focuses more on the experience of the area and its identity than on just saying this is solely for industrial and this is solely for commercial. And finally getting to implementation and next steps. The master plan does include an implementation section to help set the stage both for you as city council and the larger community to make progress on achieving the vision and goals of the plan. We did try to keep this section short to keep it from feeling too overwhelming. However, a lot of work went in behind the scenes to sort of organize it. So for example, each individual action listed under each goal was ranked based on its relative importance, boldness, and urgency in getting it done through that prioritization survey that I mentioned. And then this graph on the slide shows the result of that prioritization survey. So if you were one of the people that filled that out, thank you. It was extremely helpful. I know it was very long and detailed. But as you can see on the slide, it immediately shows you what the top priorities are based on their relative importance, urgency, and boldness. So that was very helpful. We used that information as well as the city's role as either being a lead on the action, a participant in the action, or playing a support role to kind of categorize each of the actions. And this next slide shows what that looks like. And so this slide again shows what the matrix looks like. There's one page for each pillar of the plan, and it just allows you to quickly identify the items that should be acted on first. So with this slide, for example, I think there's, 11 actions shown, but 3 jump out right away as being high priority actions where the city is the lead. So that's kind of how this matrix can be used as a tool to help us figure out what we want to work on first. And then finally, next steps. So immediate next steps for this project include having a public hearing at the September 29th Planning Board meeting. We also hope to have an overview document ready at that point to distribute for the public and for those who do not want to have to wade through like a 100-page document. And then following adoption, it's going to be up to you, City Council, Planning Board, city staff, and other community partners to make sure that this plan is acted on. This will involve monitoring and tracking progress, keeping the plan fresh and relevant to ensure the community remains engaged. And then it will also be really important to make sure that the annual budgeting process, the biannual CIP process, and major policy decisions align with and support the community's vision. So with that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for that presentation. I know you guys have worked really hard and that there have been countless hours invested in getting us to this point. I do have a couple questions. I see that there's an ask of the committee tonight to consider a motion for an adoption of this resolution, but shouldn't it go to the planning board first before that?
So
This
the
says adopt.
resolution is asking city council to endorse the master plan.
The resolution is just to endorse.
Yes,
Okay.
and then the actual adoption will happen at
At the
planning board.
Understood, okay. So, haven't been able to directly correlate every one of these questions to an item in the book yet, but I have received a list of questions from another counselor that they were not able to attend tonight. And is there still an ability to make revisions to this document? What about for typos? Like, where are we at with those types of things?
So yeah, a typo, yes, that can be treated as a scrivener's error.
Okay.
If it's going to be an actual change to the content, I think at this point,
Planning board's public hearing?
yeah, we've got the public hearing scheduled for the planning board. Certainly, that is an opportunity for folks to weigh in. I think we were hoping that at this point, the plan would be ready for adoption.
Yes.
So,
Understood. Like I said, I think that some of these items are like very simply changing the word agency to institution or some, things that maybe make it a little bit more clear, but don't change the intent of the underlying statements. So I can pass those along and then maybe have some of these questions go directly to that public hearing.
perfect.
Okay, fabulous. Counselor Haas?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I may repeat a couple of things here, but I just want to trace the process out that we're going forward. So we can recommend that the council endorse the master plan. Okay, and the council's endorsement is not adoption. The planning board has the power to adopt the master plan, to which they are responsible going forward. They have to measure up to that all the way. And the planning board meeting is on September 29. So one of my concerns was that and people have enough time to review this. Now, it's been available since the beginning of June as a PDF on the screen that most people will try to read on their phone, and that's kind of difficult. And people aren't motivated to really dig into something until they know the clock is ticking on the final chance. So I hope we can get good advertisement of the September 29 meeting out quickly, as I asked my fellow councilors to do so, and that the city should do so as well, so people understand the process. And also the fact that the council does not approve the master plan, the planning board does. That may have been clear to everybody, but it wasn't necessarily clear to me. So,
Right. And this evening, so when we make our motion here tonight, it reads as though we may be adopting something, but that adoption is not of this plan. That adoption is of an intent to support the plan in general. So,
Yes, and that,
two very different things.
I will mention the decision to do this through a resolution was based on the fact that that's how this body has done it in the past. So that's where that came from.
Yeah, no problem. It's good to make it really clear, though.
couple more items, sorry. So the public hearing on the 29th is really the first time there's been a public hearing or workshop or anything on the finished document before adoption. It was presented, and I don't recall if questions were taken at that point, but it's not until the document's out there and we know the clock is ticking. So that at the same night that we have the public hearing, the planning board will vote on its adoption.
That's up to the planning board to decide.
Yes, yeah, I'm
They
sorry.
could, yeah.
They will vote yea or nay.
Yeah, well, they could, or they could decide, once they close the public hearing, to continue their deliberation at a future meeting. I will say, though, that the plan has not changed significantly from the June 3rd Future Summit event, and it has been publicly available. And there were, following that June 3rd event, 2 master plan steering committee meetings that were open to the public where they discussed the plan. Those were not noticed as a public hearing, but they were, we did put out a newsletter and sort of advertise them. And then as far as the public hearing on the 29th, we're planning to put out a newsletter to help advertise that as well. And I'm sure our communications director will do something fabulous, because she always does. So.
Yeah, that's important here. So the planning board will have options at that point. I know many members of some of the members of the planning board are on the steering committee. So, there's a little built-in bias to accept it there. But we'll see how the public hearing goes. And frankly, the interest of the public will be defined by who shows up at the public hearing. So it's important for us to advertise it. So a couple more questions, if I may. Little different direction. This was a great effort over the past year and a little more maybe. I was part of some of it. What might we do differently in the future, rather than just take this thing, let the planning board work on it, we look at it now and then 10 years, 15 years from now, we trot it out and say, hey, we need to update this thing. What might we do differently to make it a easier lift?
Legislation, I believe, around the amount of time we hold on to a master plan. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a guideline, so the state recommends updating it every 5 to 10 years. But due to, quite frankly, the level of effort and the resources that it takes, many communities tend to go a little bit longer. Well, there's kind of 2 approaches. So like some communities might not update their master plan every 20 or 30 years. Not recommended. Some communities will update it piecemeal. I think the city of Keene has tried the piecemeal approach in the past, and it didn't work out very well. So yeah, I would say about 10 years is probably a good target, just because of how much time and effort it takes. And then, if you're constantly focusing on updating the plan, it's hard to focus on implementation. So I think, to your point, though, it's really important to keep it relevant and fresh, and I think that's one of the things that the planning board will be discussing, and the steering committee brought that up as well. They want to see this plan get revisited regularly. They suggested, for example, having a dashboard to measure our progress and things like that. So we've started internally discussing ideas about what we could do, but I think that'll be really important.
Yeah, I have heard of at least one town, city that updates their master plan every year. They spend a lot more money than we did by doing it that way. But to have some kind of measurement as we go along would be great. It would make it much more real. I'm sorry, Paul?
Mary did mention that internally and externally, we've been talking about how the department with the planning board will develop a live mechanism or mechanisms to track the progress of the master plan as we move along, and how we articulate that and get that out to the community, and keeping it fresh. That was one of the major comments that I heard coming into town, was that we didn't hear about the update on the last plan until one of these events we had, and we found out how much progress we had made. But it hadn't been something that had been an ongoing effort. So that's a commitment from us to do that
Thank you.
now.
I had one more question, but I left my mind with Paul's great answer, so I may come back.
Okay. Counselor Jones?
Did you remember?
He did, but I called on you.
Oh,
Counselor.
thank you. I had the honor of serving on this committee and also with the Consultant Search Committee, and I want to thank staff for an excellent job that was done. I was a little more familiar than other people. I was chair of PLD when we passed our 2010 plan, so I knew the procedure better than some people. This actually isn't the city's council tool anymore. It was the committee's tool, and now ownership belongs to the planning board. We're just endorsing. And most of the follow-up in here will be done by the planning board. There will be references to this plan in almost any future ordinance or resolution that we do. Councilors have the right to reference the plan, and I wish they would. I want to thank you for some of the things you did, especially the things I asked for. If I'm looking at the future land use map, and I see the neighborhood business nodes are in there. That's, just so the PLD members know, that's something that's on more time at the joint committee right now. That's something that I've been asking for, and I'm glad it's theirs. Thank you for that. And Mary, you know what my favorite section is right now, that I've been asking for since we first started interviewing people, the implementation. If we did one thing wrong on our last plan, we didn't have an implementation. There's a lot of boxes we could have checked off that we didn't, and there's some that we didn't that we probably should have. This is great. I thank you so much for doing that. It was a wonderful process. And thank you very much for, we're making great progress here, and we look forward to the planning board doing their thing.
Great. Counselor Williams, did you want to add anything?
The only thing I want to add is a huge thank you to you and to all city staff and to everyone who's participated in this. It's been amazing to watch. It's been amazing to participate in. I think we've got a great document, and I appreciate all the work that went into it.
Great.
Thank you.
Counselor Haas, did you recall your last item?
It came back. Mary, there's some linkage legislatively from the state between having a master plan and being allowed to have a land development code or being allowed to have a planning board. Could you explain that a little bit so we know why we do this?
Sure, yeah, in order to, so there's a bunch of things that are reliant on the community having a master plan. One is having a zoning ordinance, or subdivision regulations, or site plan regulations. or a Historic District Commission, all of which we have. There's also the CIP plan requires having a master plan that's adopted. So, yeah, well, the document itself is not regulatory and doesn't create any new requirements or anything like that. It is, it's meant to be a guide for all of the major policy decisions that the city makes. So it is very important. So, yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm ready to make a motion.
We're not ready yet.
We're not ready.
We have not spoken to the public.
Sorry.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak about this document tonight? All right. Seeing none, I'm actually going to look to Counselor Jones for a motion.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, this should say endorsement.
So that was my clarification question.
Yeah.
The adoption of the resolution is a resolution to endorse. So
So
although
we're
it looked,
adopting a resolution that endorses.
correct.
So I would move to recommend the adoption of Resolution R 225-32.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Counselor Jones, seconded by Counselor Haas. Any questions on that? I know the verbiage is a little confusing, so glad we've been able to clarify. This is an adoption of our endorsement. All right, seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. All right, great. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you, guys. Item number 3. I don't want to lose my place here. Authorization to enter mutual aid agreement with the town of Marlborough for a building inspection and code enforcement service. Community Development Director Paul Andrews.
Thank you, Chair. Mike Hagan is actually
Oh,
here to
Mike,
present
welcome.
tonight, as he's been working on this item for the last few weeks. So take it away, Mike.
Thank you, committee. As you can see in your packet, the town of Marlborough reached out to us about some inspection services. We looked into it and put together a mutual aid agreement, or what we hope to have is a mutual aid agreement between the city of Keene and the town of Marlborough to provide inspection and code enforcement services. I'm happy to go in depth, but I know you have a long agenda tonight. It's a pretty boilerplate. It's all regulated under RSA 53A32. So we've done our best to put it into a nice package and present it to the committee and seek approval to authorize that to enter into that mutual aid agreement.
Is this agreement that we hold with any other community currently?
Not for building inspection
Not
services
building
at this
inspection
time.
services? Okay.
Keene has provided plan review services for the town of Winchester for the, it was the Rite Aid building. We did a plan review service for that.
On a project-specific
Yeah,
case, okay.
so it's not unfamiliar to our community, but with this, the new RSA and the mutual aid agreement, we're putting it together. So.
Okay. City Manager, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just that I'm supportive of this. We had a lot of conversation about what it meant to have a mutual aid agreement and ensuring that this wasn't at the expense of the Keene taxpayers. They have a conflict for reviewing a project that's happening in their community, and they needed some outside assistance. But it is an agreement that is allowed by RSA, and so we did follow very closely what the RSA says. But I always prioritize the city of Keene's needs and ensure that we are not taking on responsibilities for another community without fair reimbursement.
Okay, fantastic. Any questions from the committee? Counselor Haas?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, do we know what staffing Marlborough actually has right now for inspections and reviews?
We do. There is a part-time building inspector as well as a part-time electrical inspector.
Okay, it sounds pretty thin, and our staffing is a little more robust that we can handle this workload. Even though the instance you mentioned was in our packet, and I respect that. That's, yeah, sometimes people need help from the outside, but you know, I'd fear us becoming the agency for them, and most of the time when a large organization provides a service to a smaller organization, there's some kind of markup associated with it, not just at our cost. So I was disappointed to see that there was nothing like that in there, but open to thoughts.
Yeah, so the state of New Hampshire is pretty strict in terms of what we can charge for fees and reimbursements. Unless it's an enterprise fund, we're not generating revenue. And even an enterprise fund is really just offsetting costs. And so we're pretty limited as to what we can charge for a service like this. And as long as we are being reimbursed wholly, and one of the things we made sure to include in the agreement is a short notice if we need to cancel at any time or if it's something that we simply can't take on.
Great, thank you.
So does reimburse wholly mean just our normal fee, or does it mean the actual cost to the city of the employees' time and benefits and all that goes with it?
Sure, I can help answer that question. The city of Keene currently has a fee structure to cover the costs. They would pay us directly for the services provided. So for the plan review, as well as the inspections, would cover the cost of the individual doing the plan review and the inspections and the administrative process for the paperwork and issuing the permit. Yes, it
Yeah,
covers our
you
costs.
see where I'm going with it. Now, if we're limited by state law, so be it. It's the way it is for so many things. But I'm concerned that this will interfere with the time spent on Keene issues. As code enforcement has been a concern over the past couple, 3, 5 years, whatever. We brought on Rick Wood to help with that and get that organized. I guess he's done such a great job that we have additional capacity to do this.
I think, yeah, I will let you, but I think capacity is not the same as ability, right? So I think that Rick has brought quality to our fourth floor, but I think we've had capacity. We just might have not been using that in a way that was the most constructive. I don't know if the city manager was going down that vein, but.
Yeah, I guess I want to add that we have capability, and as you were saying, I wouldn't say we have a ton of capacity, and I have the same concern. I don't want us to be pulled in too many directions because I want our priority to be our work that we do here in the city of Keene. However, we've helped other communities from time to time, and as long as it's not at our expense. And I think of the revenue office. We've registered vehicles for another town when they had an issue in their office for a week or two, or we've assisted in other ways. And I think that that's just part of being in New Hampshire municipal government. We do tend to help each other.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Certainly good neighbor policy, and that's a good thing to do. I'm glad that you have a 30-day cancellation in it, because it could get ugly. They lay off both of those part-timers, or they retire, or whatever they're going to do. We can't have it all fall on us. So thank you for paying attention to that and getting that in there.
Anyone else? Counselor Jones?
Thank you. I just see this more as a mutual aid agreement where we're getting reimbursed for services performed. And it's because they have a conflict, so they can't do it. So I think it's very simple. And if there's more to it, should it be called into court or something like that, we still get reimbursed for that fee. So it's just a mutual agreement and being a good neighbor.
Anyone else from the committee? Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion. Are you comfortable with that, Counselor Hawes?
Sure. Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to enter into the mutual aid agreement with the Township of Marlborough.
Do I have a second? Motion by Counselor Hawes, seconded by Counselor Jones. Any questions on that motion? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous as well. Okay. ticking things off our list tonight. Item 4, Counselor Williams, request for consideration of an ordinance amendment to regulate the muzzling of dogs. So this evening, I believe we will be hearing from Counselor Williams. We also have our Animal Control Officer, Michelle Grimes, here, and our Deputy City Clerk, Kathleen Richards, here to speak to us about some of the city process. But do you want to get us started, Counselor Williams, and bring us up to speed for how we got here?
Okay, just to fill everyone in on the plot. You will recall, possibly 18 months or so ago, we were here talking about this issue before because there was an attack by a large dog on a small dog, and the large dog had a history of attacking other dogs in the past. So the dog's owner, who's here tonight, and I hope we hear from her, the small dog's owner, requested that we consider a muzzle ordinance to say that okay, if you have a dog and it's a known offender and is potentially a risk to other dogs in public, that we pass an ordinance that requires that dog to wear a muzzle. And my thought was that this maybe shouldn't be a permanent sentence, but perhaps 2 years with a muzzle is a good lesson for a dog, and for a dog owner specifically. What we're really looking for is not to punish dogs or dog owners, but just to improve behavior and improve safety overall in our city. At the time, we found out that we were not able to pass such an ordinance in Keene due to a difficulty in New Hampshire laws that said that muzzles could only be used in the context of a rabies outbreak. This was a curious interpretation, but there it was, and that's essentially what it said. So, given this problem, we took it to the state of New Hampshire to update the law, and State Representative Jody Newell is here tonight. She introduced House Bill 250, which passed by unanimous consent in both the House and Senate, and was signed by the governor back in August. And HB 250 allows us to pass a muzzling ordinance in Keene. So what we were not able to do 18 or so months ago, we're now able to do. So what I would like now, the next step is for this city or this panel to consider, do we want a dog ordinance, a muzzling ordinance? What should that entail? What can we do to make sure that Keene citizens are safe from dogs that have a history of attacking others? And what are appropriate ways of enforcing this? I know that as part of the process for getting HB 250 passed, there were quite a few people with interests came forward, including the Humane Society, which has they have some model ordinances around these things. So as we consult with experts and hear from the public about what they would want, I also hope that we can look to what the model ordinances say and what has been done in other communities. So that's basically the summary, and I hope we can continue this conversation.
Great, thank you, Counselor Williams. So this is, and we're going to hear from our city attorney too, who's going to tune us up a little bit on where we're at in the perspective of what this allows us to do. But this is brand new, and so I don't know that any community in the state of New Hampshire has done it yet. So we're going to be, as we have this conversation, kind of paving this path in this conversation. So I don't think we're going to do it tonight, but I think it's a good place for us to start. City Attorney, do you want to kind of give us your perspective on where this House bill brings us and what we can do moving forward?
Sure, thank you. I wanted to give a quick overview of how the dog ordinance that we have and how it's coming from state law and what the new change is in that context. So I'm going to give a little bit of an overview, more specific to the tiny change that was made, so we can understand what it means. Going very high level, as you all are aware, New Hampshire is what's called a Dillon's Rule state, which is the opposite of a home rule state. Translation means we at the city level can regulate only what the state says we can regulate. Under New Hampshire law, specifically RSA 466-39, The municipalities have been expressly authorized to regulate the restraint of dogs, and we are also authorized to issue fines. Though we've been authorized to regulate the restraint of dogs, and the state has still limited the type of activity that we can regulate in that sphere, and also the enforcement measures. So for the type of activity that we can regulate, that's laid out in a list in 46631. The state identified acts or actions that we can pick from to qualify dogs as either a nuisance, menace, or vicious dog. We in the city have grabbed from that list and selected those actions that we fit into those categories. If you look at our city code, section 1035, that's where we've selected which actions will put a dog in that category. Then, as mentioned, the state also limits what we can do for enforcement. 46631A lays out the monetary penalty. So even though we can pick actions and assign them to categories, the categories and their fines are already picked out by statute for us. And now bring in the new law. This new law is effective starting September 30th. It authorizes us at the city and other municipalities to require muzzlings of dogs who have engaged in one of those particular actions in RSA 46631. That specific action is 46631-2G. Quote, if whether alone or in a pack with other dogs, the dog bites, attacks, or preys on game animals, domestic animals, fowl, or human beings. So if a dog has done one of those action, this statute authorizes municipalities to require that action warrants a muzzle.
So can I just clarify?
Sure.
Because that language is really specific.
Yes.
So it requires that we, just say that to me again. So
Yes.
if one of those things happens, preys on game, animals, human beings, livestock, that the state is requiring that we,
No, so this, good question. The statute being an enabling statute, now we have the option to include when something like that happens in that sentence.
okay,
We can create an ordinance that says, once that happens, the muzzling is at play. But we
Okay.
have to create an ordinance here, it's just an enabling statute that's changed.
understood.
Okay. Good question. The other point to make, well, actually, the other point I was gonna make is probably that it was an enabling statute, so thank you for asking. Any other questions on that?
Anyone yet?
Do you have more? Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Amanda, do you have more to add on this, or I followed you so far, but
Sure.
I'm curious about the next part. In
Well, just
red.
the last piece was in regard to enforcement. I mentioned we had the monetary fine set out. Muzzling is a new enforcement measure that's enabled in the statute, and it's not necessarily parked anywhere other than has to be for that specific act I was describing about the biting and attacking. So we could put that, if you look at our statute, you'll see that there's a fine for a first, second, and a subsequent offense. We could play around in that section. That's not set out in the new statute.
Okay. And just to clarify, Counselor Haas, the document that we have that has the red type in it, that is not a document that's being proposed for us to consider, that's the state's
That's a state law.
law. So our ordinances that we follow currently are not in your packet. Okay,
Thank you.
all right, so, just a second. So the next thing that I think that we have our animal control officer here tonight, and we have our clerk here tonight. Can we talk about how this is currently functioning and what a change to our current process would look like and how we would be able to manage that?
Yes, and I'm so glad they're here to answer those questions.
Okay, so before we get into a bunch of questions from this committee, Counselor Haas, I just want to make sure we get all of the information on the table. So I'd like to invite our animal control officer and our deputy city clerk. Welcome, ladies. So.
It's good to be
is
here,
it-
thank
I-
you.
I think that we're gonna go through a timeline. So if we can start with our Michelle Grimes, our animal control officer, if you can explain like, if we have a situation where we have an incident with a dog, what are the steps that you go through and your office goes through? And then how is the clerk's office involved after that process?
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. Currently, depending on the type of violation, so nuisance, menace, vicious, and depending on the situation at hand. So the dog owner would receive, let's say, a first offense if the dog has never had an issue before. So the dog would be deemed as a vicious dog if it had a bite on another person or dog. The owner would receive a first offense violation. They have to pay that within 96 hours from date of it being issued. If a second offense happens within a 12-month period, they would get a second offense, which I think currently is $400. If a third offense happened within a 12-month period, and or if the dog was deemed a danger to the public, they would then end up being given a court date, and that would go through the court process. Currently, we have one dog and owner that's in that process for this year, 2025.
And so what is that court process? Like, what comes of that court process? Is that my understanding from our previous conversations were that the city only had the ability to institute financial penalties. Is that what the court is doing in that process, or is there something else that could happen to that dog?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
This is the first time I have been in this position in terms of dealing with a dog and owner that had to be deemed vicious and then it go to court.
Okay. City Attorney, has the city ever been in this situation that we're aware of?
Not that I know of, but once it does go to court, it's usually out of like the municipal side of things. Just like when police officers do their arrests, the county attorney will prosecute it. So I don't hear about how it happens once it gets over there, and it sounds like it's pretty infrequent.
Okay.
We'll see if anybody with longer tenure has insight.
Yes, Chief.
Hi, Steve Stewart.
Welcome.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm the police chief. So really, it's just a difference between a civil process within the city level, and then it's a state violation if it's taken to the court, across the street to district court or circuit court. The penalties can largely be the same, but what the court could do is, order the animal seized, or in some cases, destroyed, depending on the viciousness of the attack or the circumstances, that sort of thing.
Okay. That's where I was going with this, because I think that you hear anecdotally people's concern of, oh, my dog has had a bite and I'm going to be asked to put that animal down. And then to read through our statutes, it looks like the city's only recourse has been so far to offer financial penalties. So I was curious where that assumption comes from, but it sounds like the court has the ability to make those decisions.
They do, and of course, it's a due process type of situation, but they get complicated. I can only think of one in the recent past where the attack has been so vicious that the dog was housed at the Humane Society for an extended period of time, and there was negotiations between the prosecutors and the owner's defense attorneys, and it ultimately ended in that, but it's rare.
Okay. That's really good to know and understand as part of this process.
Sure.
Thank you. So from the city's perspective, if we have had a complaint where, what I would like to understand is if we've had a complaint where someone has said, there have been two dogs and there's been a bite between two dogs. So what is the investigatory process in order to determine which dog was at fault in this situation? Or, like, how do you build evidence? Because I feel like someone might be willing to take it on the chin and, yes, I'm going to pay a fine. But if our new ordinance reads that you're required to muzzle your dog for a year after a finding of a bite, as an example, someone might appeal that decision because that feels like more, that's a bigger burden for the person to adhere to that than to pay their $100 fine to the city clerk and move on with their life. So I'm concerned that if we create an ordinance, that we have a really good process for how we determine what dog was at fault. Obviously, if it was like, maybe a farm animal or livestock or something, there might be an obvious decision being made. But how, is there evidence collecting? What happens if it's unclear which dog provoked the situation? What would you suggest we do in those situations?
Sure, so
Oh,
if.
we have our
go
chief.
I can help too if you want.
Please, please do.
This process isn't going to change any of that.
Okay.
An investigation is an investigation. It's always fact collecting. Is there videotape? Are there witnesses? What does the physical evidence look like? All of those things. And for the large majority of these things, Michelle won't even necessarily be responding to those because she only works a limited number of hours per week. So it'll be police officers that are sort of doing the investigation in many instances, and then turning it over to Michelle to like help sort through what the process is on that side if it's not looking like it's going to the criminal side or the state side instead of the local side.
Okay.
So this wouldn't change any of the process of investigation or anything like that.
And then if we've made a determination, do we have an appeals process? What would that look like?
The appeals process would be not paying your civil forfeiture, and then the matter goes to district court or circuit
Okay.
court across the street.
Okay.
So if they dispute what's happening there, they just don't pay it, and then we issue a summons and they appear in.
And explain
in-
their case and present their
And they
evidence
have,
to the judge.
due process.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. Don't go far. City Attorney, did you want to add?
No, that was a very helpful answer. I was just going to note that the statute, though the existing statute did have fines assigned for categories, and we know that muzzling dogs has to be with vicious dogs. It doesn't necessarily say that it needs to be parked in our ordinance in the same way that our fines are. Our fines right now work where you can pay it or you can wait it out and go to court. But if you pay it, you don't have to go to court. We could take it out of that structure and have it separately. There's a lot of flexibility in how we want to put it here. I don't
Okay.
know that we need to get crazy creative, but to the extent you're thinking about, the position of the person that order is on, it could be a different structure than how we do the fines.
Okay, and so I'm going to turn to the clerk's office. So let's say we're trying to make a determination in this future potential ordinance that we're imagining. Is it your office that keeps the records of how many attacks have happened or how many fines have been paid, or like, where does that data live?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The data is being collected by the animal control officer as far as all the assignments of the forfeitures, correct?
Yes, currently I have a manual Excel spreadsheet that I use. So anytime I issue a forfeiture, regardless of what it's for, it's entered into my Excel database so that I can keep record of it.
Okay.
And then the three-part form, city clerk's office gets a copy of that so
Okay.
that they have something to refer back to if and when the owner comes in to make that payment. They then in turn, they, meaning the city clerks, will email me or call me generally the day that it gets paid to let me know so that I can take it out of my current 2025 forfeitures.
And this gets, as I've been thinking through this just starts to get cumbersome and unclear to me how, because at first I was like, well, is there a way to document through the city clerk's office if we said, after a second bite that the muzzling portion of the ordinance would be enforced? How would we know if if it was the same dog in the second instance as in the first instance, and would that be attached to their city license number? Or what if it's an out-of-town dog? It's not like a criminal record that's attached to a fingerprint on a person. So I'm curious about, like, what do we think that our capacity for this record keeping is, and do we think that what is your take on how we could possibly manage that?
So right now, we have our dog licensing database that's in the application Clerkworks. And it monitors the dogs that are licensed in Keene as far as just licensing them per state statute. So we keep track of, the ones that are new dogs, the dogs that are supposed to be licensed that haven't been licensed and things like that. For the dogs that commit an offense, nuisance, menace, and vicious, our role has been just point-of-sale transactions for the payments to come in to the city of Keene through the right cost code for the budget.
Okay.
So we don't associate the record of payment with the dog in our dog licensing database for a couple reasons, I guess. Some of the offending dogs may not be licensed in the city of Keene, may not live in Keene. So at this point, that system is not associated.
Okay. And Michelle, do you feel like the system that you're using is adequate enough to be able to?
I might have to have the chief to come up. I don't know enough about the database. I know what I use, but I don't know what the capabilities of,
Like all the systems as a whole? might
yeah,
be?
as adding
Okay.
an addendum, if you will.
So there's two different systems that we're talking about. Our sort of overarching record system doesn't accept civil forfeitures very well, so those need to be sort of kept in the spreadsheet that Michelle's talking about. But if there's a summons issued for this nuisance or menace dog, that's easily tracked in our system. So it's doable, and it really doesn't happen that often. We're talking about, we have one dog right now that's in the process.
Right.
And the dog that, sort of was involved in starting this process was probably the only one before that in the last 2-3 years. So in that regard, I don't think it's a insurmountable
Tracking.
undertaking
burden.
to sort of.
But the summons is issued to the person and not to the dog.
Correct.
And so, I mean, there's just, I'm concerned about closing loopholes as well as we start working through this. So if you are under ownership of a little black and white dog and that dog bites someone and you get a summons because of the viciousness of that bite, and then you are nervous about being able to manage this dog who has this bite history now, and you rehome that dog to another person, does that bite doesn't follow the dog? That's my concern. Like, how do you, if you follow what I'm saying, right? So
I suppose you could write it in there if the city attorney wanted to be clever with her ordinance writing. That
There's no national database that
tracks that.
no, but if we knew locally,
And-
is what we're saying, is if we know a dog's problematic and it did something and
It's a
it's
small
changed
enough-
ownership. Now, you
yeah.
couldn't enhance the penalties or the fines against the new owner, but you could probably still order that same animal muzzled based off of second offense, if you wrote it that way.
Okay. But we would be, honestly.
We have an objection.
I saw that. We would be making determinations off from institutional knowledge and not record keeping, which is a concern of mine. And I wonder if we could explore somehow having that data associated with the license or the identifying. I mean, I guess I don't know enough to know, like, I know what I have to give the city to identify my dogs, and my dog is Lilac, and you have her listed as Gray. So, these are very common things. There's not a specific thing that, and I want to make sure that we're capturing the appropriateness of the ordinance we're trying to create. City Attorney, yes.
I think these are good questions, and I appreciate it from like a constitutional perspective of like how we're thinking about the dog and the human. But I can tell you that hopefully this will help out a little bit. The statute, obviously, which is controlling, will I'm going to say criminalize the person for their dog's action. And if the dog gets passed around to different people, I mean, it's not going to follow the dog. It's if you as a person own this dog and this dog has done multiple things, and that's where the evaluation is really going to end.
Okay. All right. It just gets a little tricky because we're not muzzling the person, right?
Sometimes we should.
Maybe. Agree. We haven't gotten that authority from the state yet. So, okay, just all things that I want to be, as we're talking about what we want to do for the next steps. These are just things that I, fall asleep at night thinking about, so. Okay, does anyone else have any questions from the committee? Counselor Haas, I know you started off with some. Did we get any answered?
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the red text that was in the agenda packet is part of the state law. I wasn't sure about that. As far as the problems following the dog rather than the owner, sounds kind of like a real estate transaction where there'd be disclosure issues that you can go back on. So I'm thinking of it in those terms. I'm just in favor of us crafting as strict an ordinance that we can, because once a dog gets into these categories, it's probably not changing. Thank you.
Anyone else? Counselor Williams?
Just like what you just said, I'd actually like to hear from a dog behavior expert at some point
I would
to
too.
find out, do dogs change over time? I don't know the answer to that.
So I do have, I don't have 100% experience with this, but I do have a dog that has gone to significant training and could probably use a little tune-up because he just turned 2 and he's, he's too big for his britches sometimes. But I spoke with my dog trainer when this came up in the first instance, and his immediate reaction was, oh gosh, muzzling can provoke aggression. Training, and obviously he's a dog trainer, so he's gonna, he was like, training is what you need, and I can say from managing a large breed dog that is a working line dog, without training, I would have had trouble with him. He is not a dog you want to let get away with anything, and I've brought him into City Hall, and people compliment him and his energy and how wonderful he is, but that is in large part by me getting trained, really not him at the end of the day. And so if we could require muzzling and, behavior classes like poor driving, if you don't want to muzzle, then you're required to take so many weeks of behavioral training courses or something, I would feel really much better about that, because in a lot of these cases, I feel like people are the problems, not the dogs. People humanize their dogs and they don't treat them like pets, and they don't set good limitations and boundaries, and then we get incidences where people get hurt, and that's unfortunate for the dog, and you're not gonna fix the dog if you don't fix the people. So, that's difficult. I also don't want to see people getting hurt because people aren't doing what they should be doing. Yes, Chief.
Yeah, I would just say that sort of as you're considering this, if you're sort of trying to couch it with any, I don't want to be too mean to the dogs, maybe it only has to wear it for a year or 2 years, I would ask you what's changed in those 2 years.
Correct.
Nothing likely. And if you're depending on training, then that's probably also a slippery slope, depending on what sort of effort the owner puts in.
Yeah, absolutely.
After the fact,
Those are
after they go to 6 hours of classes, do they do their homework,
Yep.
so to speak? So,
Yeah.
as you're sort of considering those things, whether you want this or don't want it, it's probably, if it's going to be muzzled, it needs to be muzzled for forever.
Right, and I would like to see an opportunity for that dog to earn its way out of that muzzle, potentially. There could be I hate to say, like, we see people who get points on their license because they're young and they're bad, terrible, making terrible decisions driving. And they take defensive driving classes and they grow up and they have a more responsible behavior. There's a way to earn your way back into a positive experience with a police officer when they're pulling you over, or with your insurance company when they're sending you your bill.
I would like to see.
And so I'd love to see those types of opportunities there. And I think some of it is naivety, on the part of the dog owner. I'm not saying necessarily in every situation. There could be dog owners who are acting careless, but I've spent countless hours watching dog training videos, and I just, anyone who goes, and Cesar Millan is like the most famous dog trainer on TV. You can watch people bring their dog to him, and within 30 seconds, he has turned around a problem that they have been experiencing for years and didn't know how to manage. And so I think that there is an opportunity in training to help alleviate some long-term considerations. I think if you have a second bite, we need to start talking about muzzling, and then maybe with some sort of proof of training, after a certain period of time, you could earn your way out of it. And if there's a third instance that's not, then you're not allowed to, we can create some sort of system that gives opportunities for good behavior, maybe. Yep, city manager.
Because we love our dogs, I have a question.
Yes.
So I haven't walked my dog on the trail lots of times. My dog's on a leash. Other dogs come up to my dog and she does not like it.
Mm-hmm.
So if my dog bites that dog because the other dog is running free, who is at fault? Or if somebody is walking by my house and my dog is outside and their dog runs onto my lawn, who is at fault?
Yes.
And I think that it's really important, so I was interested in the investigative part, yeah.
Well, I am as well, and I just want to point out one other thing, because, again, I have this really aggressive-looking, big black German Shepherd, right? He looks like 100 pounds of teeth. That's what he looks like. And in 2 instances in the last month, and I tell everyone he's not friendly, like he's very friendly, but I don't tell them that, right? Because I just don't want anybody in his face. So I have had 2 instances in the last month, one with a child and one with an adult, both of which they were like, "Oh, can I pet your dog?" And I said, "No, you cannot. He's not friendly." And the child ran straight up to the dog and was like, "But I'm really good with dogs," and grabbed a hold of him, and he didn't do anything or didn't react. But that goes back to my investigation questions, because, like, what if he did? And the same instance, my husband and I were eating dinner, and we were at an outdoor table, and he was laying at the bottom of the table, and the waitress had served, and no one had talked to him or spoken to him, and he was wonderful and behaving, and a man came running out of the restaurant. He was like, "Oh my God, I love your dog." And we were like, "He's not friendly." And he was like, "No, I'm good with dogs." And he came right up to him and went to grab him, and he growled at him. And the people at the table next to us were like, "Oh my God," like we had brought this terrible dog out to eat. But people don't respect people's boundaries, and it causes me anxiety about, like, what are the ramifications going to be for individuals. And I know that this law was brought about by an incident, and I don't want to diminish the effect of that incident on the person that it happened to. But there is another side of this story that I want to try to thread this needle and make sure that we don't have dogs who might not be the ones who are committing heinous acts of viciousness, but are in the wrong place at the wrong time, or have a dog run up on them while they're on a leash, or, these things that we're bringing up. And, like, how do you make those determinations?
Well, okay, so, I think as we start to answer that question, I think Michelle can answer some questions for you also or give you some insight on the training aspect of it, 'cause she's a certified dog trainer, correct? And maybe sort of what certifications you would look for, and if the person's reputation was held up against them signing off on the dog, maybe there'd be a little more truth in signing off on dogs, for lack of a better term. In terms of the investigations, there's always going to be different factors at play. And the city attorney could probably answer questions better on where some of that's going to fall, because ultimately it all can end up civil, right? Is the dog on your property, or is it on somebody else's property? Are you in public with it? All of those things. Just because it's right doesn't mean that you're not going to be still, doesn't mean the dog won't suffer for it.
Right.
Just because you told them not to go up to your dog, and they did anyway, doesn't mean that a bite in the face isn't going to result poorly for the animal.
Right.
I'll turn it over to Michelle. She may have some more on that and the training portion.
Sure. I just wanted to state, so I'm a certified professional dog trainer with credentials through one of the only nationally recognized credentialing organization for dog trainers. It is not a regulated industry, and anybody can call themselves a dog trainer. So as a certified professional dog trainer through this particular organization, as with any professional credential licensing, if you will, there's not only a national test that you have to take, but also you have to keep up with your accreditation yearly in terms of CE hours. So to your point, I appreciate the fact that you have been thinking about all of the outside of the box thinking. Absolutely what happened with what caused this new law, let's say, devastating. And in that particular situation, it was not a gray situation where we had to try to figure out why something happened. However, because of the cases that I work with professionally, there are many instances where a dog is fearful of other dogs, but it doesn't mean that it can't enjoy time with its owner out on a leash. Unfortunately, we have people that don't follow those laws and allow their dogs off leash, and things happen. Dogs are dogs. But it's also devastating because the consequences for, let's say, a case like yours where you have made that verbal knowledge that your dog is not friendly or what have you, it's frustrating because we as owners think that we're trying to do the best thing by communicating that we have, cause for concern, but we can't always dictate what another human being is going to do or how they're going to react. So I understand the reason behind the muzzling. I also have concerns because there are many cases where dogs can be rehabilitated. However, it relies on the owner very much and the dedication and what they want to put into it. And also, if I'm being honest, being able to swallow pride and understand that it doesn't mean your dog is terrible. It just means that there's something else happening with the dog causing those behaviors to happen. And as an owner, understanding what those underlying issues are is going to be whether or not your dog will be successful, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. And I think that it's going to be a process for us to look at, and I think, getting all of this information just on the table tonight is important for me, so that as the city attorney looks at how we might possibly move forward with any type of ordinance changes, if that's the way we're going, but I think it might be at least to look at some sort of draft of what might work. How can we, how creative do we want to be? How can we structure this in so that we have a mechanism to track it and fairly implement it? And what might be our options to support the dog if it's had a period of time or a period of training or if that's appropriate? I think looking maybe at other communities, I know New Hampshire probably isn't going to have any because this is so new for us, but there must be other communities that have laws that we could model, and maybe you could put together a proposal for us to consider.
Sure thing.
Okay. All right, so does anyone from the committee have any questions of these folks in front of us right now? No? All right, so I'm going to open it up to the public. Does anyone from the public wish to speak? Yeah. It was coming. All right, if you want to come forward to the microphone. So you can stand or sit, just state your name and address for the minute taker.
My name's Deborah LeBlanc. I live at 28 Union Street here in Keene.
Okay. And what would you like to add to the conversation?
So many things. It's
Okay.
hard to tease out the ones I want to address. You came up with so many good ideas and alternatives, and one I might want to add to the list is instead of fining people or taking their fine and having them apply it towards training sessions for their dog, a combination with experts, of training and muzzling is something I could see that might work. Thank you so much to Bobby for this whole process, and it's really, I'm not a legal person, so for me to see this, from the beginning to not quite the end, but almost where we're getting solutions together is amazing to me. So thank you to everybody for their attention to this topic. That was one of the big things I wanted to talk about was following through with not just slapping on a muzzle and saying, okay, we're done with you. My accident occurred, or I don't mean accident, but the mauling occurred on a city sidewalk on a city street where a person thinks that they're safe. And now I know that's different, so I'm glad that we are working together to find a solution so that I can feel safe again when I am with my dog walking by another dog. The other problem I had was, and I'm not sure how to address it or if I should even bring it up here, was with, and I mentioned this the first time I spoke, was the police officer that I dealt with when the mauling occurred had no information on how to treat a person, I think, that had gone through this situation. I got no direction or guidance from anybody. And I'd like to see that change in the future. There was no animal control officer when the mauling occurred, so I was just adrift. I didn't know who to talk to. I did get a bite wound in that attack, so I don't know why that was never followed up or addressed. I was given inaccurate information. Excuse me, I'm nervous, so my
It's okay.
throat's warbling. I was given inaccurate information from the police officer that I called 3 times to the station to ask for information about the other dog since I had been bit. And when I finally, on the 3rd day, said, I really need to get some information whether this dog has had vaccinations or not. I finally, on the 3rd call, got the information I was looking for. It was like pulling teeth. I said, I really need to know if I need to go to the ER or not to start rabies shots. And finally, I was told that there was no record on the dog. So I had to go to the ER and get 12 globulin shots in my hand. That was useless because then I was notified that, oh, yeah, indeed, the dog did have vaccinations. So I'd like to see perhaps guidelines set down so when the animal control officer is not available, that the police know how to handle this kind of situation. This accident caused me a lot of depression, pain, suffering. It took me a year to be able to get out on the sidewalks and feel comfortable. And so I would like that. I don't know if I should even talk about that here, but that's what I see is education in the police department, how to handle this type of situation. And I'm very grateful for all of you. I think I had so many other thoughts and ideas from all the great information you guys talked about that. I just can't tease it out right now, but
Well, and that's perfectly okay because this conversation is not over tonight. So you can go home and sleep on it. And when we get a draft language document back, write some notes on what your feelings are, read, follow along with our agenda, and you're welcome to come back and speak with us as things progress.
thank you so much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes.
Good evening, thank you. Terry O'Rourke, 34 Hillside Avenue, right here in Keene. Now, I noticed in the ordinance, you did say that nuisance is one of the conditions for, that ordinance. But I was just wondering, would excessive barking come underneath that nuisance ordinance? And if not, is there some way that it could be included in that? I can't imagine that Hillside Avenue is the only neighborhood in Keene that does experience dogs that continually bark all day at anything, everything, and nothing. So just for my own peace of mind and to make sure, no, I'm not going crazy. These dogs are barking continuously. I did keep documentation. I'm happy to leave it. I did keep documentation of 3 months, and I've got about 20 pages in here of continuous barking. So I'm hoping that is something that can be included in that nuisance ordinance.
So I'm gonna turn this over to the city attorney, but I believe it already is.
Nuisance barking?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, as I described, we have the 3 categories of dogs with actions assigned under those that would trigger which category applies. Barking for sustained periods of time of more than 1/2 hour or during night hours so as to disturb the peace and quiet of the neighborhood is parked right under nuisance dogs. So in the conversation we're having tonight just about muzzling, that's only going to be vicious dogs.
Correct. So just to give you follow-up information, so if you're experiencing something that fits in that category, that would be an appropriate time to contact the police officer or our animal control officer if it's during her hours.
Which I did twice.
And
You must have some kind of file on 25.
so I need you to address me during this
Yeah.
meeting, thank you. So if this meeting tonight is not necessarily around that portion of this ordinance or how we can effectively change it. If you're having an issue that affects you personally in regards to a situation with the department, I would ask that you follow up with the department, the chief, or with the city manager with an email or a phone call just to kind of get a grasp on your specific situation.
Okay, all right.
Okay?
Thank you.
And definitely save your information and make sure you get it to
Oh,
them.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be as brief as I can. The council did ask that I get involved in this process, not just with a letter. I followed up by attending the hearing to make sure that legislators didn't just have it stuffed in their packet, but in fact had the opportunity to ask questions if they had them. So I'm glad I did. And I'm glad that the response has been so positive because local control isn't something that the legislature was consistent on during this last legislative session. So here we are with having advocated for this policy, for this state statutory change, and there's a responsibility on the city to act, to produce a model for the state of New Hampshire. So the process here needs to be pretty deliberate. And I think that the discussion that you've had this evening is really at the right level to try to hear each other and the various perspectives on this. I definitely think that education is a big part of this, and it needs to be a part of the ordinance. And I think that we should think broadly about who needs to come to the council in some type of workshop or at least interactive conversation around a proposed ordinance, but one that's going to be progressive, meaning it's going to be iterative in its construction. To take into account many points of view, and I would hope that the veterinarian community gets engaged in this because they are an important advocate for the proper training and owner responsibilities. I think they're a good nexus for the animal control officer to not just be the sole adjudicator or educator to the community. I think the vets have some responsibility and can carry that out. I want to finish with just saying I had my own incident on this with a dog attacking me on the as I walked down State Highway 12A, where there are no city sidewalks. My side complaint, but the point being that a dog was off the leash, ran into the road, and bit me. Fortunately, I had clothes on, but Michelle's follow-up was outstanding. Not only did she respond within a day, she called me up, told me how she dealt with the owner and fined the owner, but had a good conversation with the owner about the incident. So I appreciate that, Michelle. And I encourage the public that you don't want to penalize the owner. You kind of, gee, I'm sorry, probably loves that dog. On the other hand, Michelle needs a record. And the public needs to take responsibility that when those incidents take place, that the animal control officer is notified, so that she has that kind of information to pass on if that happens another time. And that's the progressive nature of this, and I think you laid that out well. It's, how many times, how many incidents, and anyway, you've got a lot of good suggestions tonight, and let's just take our time in the construction of an ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anyone else wishing to speak on this tonight? Yes, come on up.
Hi, my name is Jody Newell, and I live at 32 Leverett Street. I feel like I'm a little too close to the thing. I think it's interesting having a conversation about how this is all going to flesh out, and I think that's kind of the point, right? Is that everything's going to flesh out to what makes sense for our community. But even in myself, I look back at different experiences that I've had, and the idea of a dog who never had any instances or whatever until like a 8-year-old birthday party, and then they went off, or the experience of Deb, where it's something where you come to find out that it's a dog that has had experiences before that. And I think what we're trying to come to at this point is the idea of what is a rational progress or process for trying to understand where a dog is at, what is the capacity for them to learn, and where we go from there. And I think, personally, from my own experience, I'm a dog owner, and I'm a terrible dog trainer. I'll just tell you right now, I am a terrible dog trainer. And my dog will get out of my house because I don't have the money to fix my screen door, like things like that. And so I do think that there are certain things to take into consideration that are for a good dog who doesn't necessarily have an owner who has the means to do training, and then also for a good dog who might try to get out every once in a while. But that is why when we were having the conversation in the committee, we were having a conversation around what is an aggressive dog versus a nuisance dog, and all of those kind of things. And all of those things have been fleshed out, at least when it comes down from the state and to the municipality, to say that we don't want, dogs who are, getting out during the day and they're just a pain in the rear, right? Or they're barking and they're a pain in the rear. We don't want those dogs to have a muzzle on them, right? We're trying to parse out what would be the most rational way for us as a community to create guidelines that take the dog and the dog owner into account. And I just wanted to kind of bring that, because I think the dog owner may not necessarily have enough money, to pay for training and things like that, but they might be a well-intentioned dog owner, and maybe they should be considered too. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak tonight? All right. Seeing none, do we have any more deliberation that we want to do at this point? Or I think we're moving in the direction of asking the city attorney to get some draft language back to us on what she thinks might be a good process to start moving forward? Do you feel like you have enough information if that's the direction we go?
Yes, I did have a question for process. Would you
Yes.
want a draft to come to PLD, or do you want a draft for first reading to go through council?
I think it should come back here.
Okay, great.
So we would move this to more time and ask, or would we move this to more time and ask the city attorney to bring us a draft? Or would we ask council for the draft?
Well, there's Councilor Williams' item that could go back with a recommendation to instruct the city attorney to draft a ordinance for first reading to bring back to PLD.
All right. I think putting it on more time is more expeditious.
Sure.
Are you comfortable with that, Councilor Williams?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Would be ready for a motion?
Yeah, I just want to make one comment that I really, think the thoughts of, it's an education thing. It's not necessarily a punishment thing, and I like the idea of, maybe we have a requirement to have a muzzle, but you get time off for good behavior if you can demonstrate that this dog is not the threat that it appears to be through training or some other way. I think that's really the spirit of what this is about. So with that, I will move to put this on more time.
Second?
Motion by Councilor Williams, seconded by Councilor Jones. Does anyone have any questions on that? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. So we hope the city attorney takes all of that information and watches this video back a couple of times and can craft some language that we can start really digging into. And maybe at that point, when we come back, we can talk about some of these other community advocates, veterinarians' offices, trainers, other potential dog owners, people maybe who've been in this situation, who can come back to us and give us feedback on what they think about the language as well, and start moving in a direction that's positive. All right, great. So that moves us to item number 5, which is not even quite halfway through our agenda tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to move things along. Some of these items that we have coming up have had a public hearing, so we will not be opening them to public comment, and this is one of them. Item 5, relating to amendments to the Land Development Code to encourage housing development in Keene, Ordinance O-2025-15-A. We have Mary Brunner here tonight. We have Paul, our Community Development Director, here tonight. And I believe that this is the ordinance that we heard the most feedback at our public hearing about. So Mary, do you want to just give us an update on I think there's 4 items in here. Do you want to go through those, or were you hoping to just answer questions and let us discuss it?
I think that's really up to you. I'm happy to go through the items if you want a refresher, and if you don't need a refresher, I can just answer questions.
I feel like I have a really good handle on the items inside this ordinance tonight. Does anyone here want Mary to go through it? Okay. So I do want to bring up to the committee that if we do have questions, we're welcome to ask. This is the item that we heard the most comments about during our public hearing. And what I would like to hear from you guys is where we stand this evening on our comfort level with moving this forward to council with a recommendation. And if there was any feeling that there needs to be an amendment, I can talk about the process for what that might look like. Does anyone want to get us started?
Go ahead.
Councilor Williams?
Just to say, I'm comfortable with it as it is. I know there was some frustration from some people about increased density, and there was a thought that it's focused on the east side. What I would like people to understand is that this process really isn't about targeting any one neighborhood. We want to spread out the burden of increased density. And to that end, we've been doing it in high-density districts. We've made buildings taller. In rural districts, we've gone from 5-acre minimum lot size to 2-acre minimum lot size. And all of these, have impacts on the neighbors, and we're cognizant of that, and we should listen to their concerns. The idea that we're doing this in so many different places, really, the purpose is to diffuse the impact so that no one neighborhood is really overwhelmed with development. And I think we've done a good job with that. I think the specific thing that people are concerned about here is having up to 6 units in one large building. I think that's appropriate. I've lived in I lived in one very big, very empty building in the medium density district that I think really would have been well suited to breaking up into 5 or 6 units. Those buildings are out there. I know there's a concern that they would all get developed really quickly. We should be so lucky to get that much housing all at once. I don't think that'll happen. I do think that the development we will get will be some of what we need the most, which is small apartments for single people. And that's really what the intention of this is, and I support it.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Williams. Councilor Jones, do you want to offer us an opinion?
I'll come back.
Councilor Haas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilor Williams. With all due respect, I disagree heartily. When you talk about sharing the burden, and we're seeing this development in these other areas, I'm not so sure we're seeing such development in other areas where we've changed the code. So it does, not that it's focused on any one neighborhood, but in this instance, there's just a single set of buildings that are very adaptable to this, and it likely would not be focused, would not be distributed throughout the medium density district. It would be focused on streets where there's large older homes. And certainly this can be done now, is my understanding. It just takes a couple other steps through the process. As Councilor Williams mentioned, there was a house that he had or he lived in that could have been developed into 5 or more dwelling units, but it's not done. I'd love to see this happen, but at this point, I'd like to see it go through the other steps, and that we're sure we take care of the other impacts that any such development could have. So that'll do for the moment, and I may be back with more.
Okay. Councilor Jones, are you?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Councilor Haas, but no, this isn't just about East Keene, but that's where we're hearing about the impact is going to be the most. And we've done so many things for East Keene over the years. Back when 2000, when I was chairman of the MSFI committee, that's when we passed the parking on a driveway ordinance. No parking if it's not on a driveway ordinance, because of the people in East Keene, because they had so many issues, mostly with density, mostly because there was a lot of student housing out there then. The reasons have changed, but we don't want to bring them back. Our urinating in public ordinance came out of that neighborhood. Our noise ordinance came out of someone on Colorado Street, but it was wholly supported by the people of East Keene because they were having issues out there. In 2004, I introduced what we call the Marlborough Street ordinance. It was actually the rezoning of East Keene. Took a long, long time because we had to get consultants. We went through 2008 where we didn't have money and we had to take it out of the CIP and put it back in. We didn't get the ordinance passed until 2019. But that basically we used to be all industrial because it was served by the railroad many years ago. Railroad is gone, it ended up being served by trucks. We had trucks going through the neighborhoods that the neighbors were very upset about that. It's just one problem after another with the east side. A number of years ago, Councilor Richards introduced a resolution that we focus on improvements on the east side to incentivize people to make their homes better, to make it better neighborhoods. And I think that has worked, and I think staff and the council have done a lot to focus on the east side. And I think this is just going to take it a step backwards. So I just don't agree with it.
So this is going to get a little bit awkward, I think, because I tend to fall on the side of Councillor Williams, where I don't see the large impact of that particular portion of this ordinance change. I think that there's a lot of concern that's not founded. I understand a little bit about development, and I understand what the costs of development are. And unfortunately, at the Joint Committee, I should have probably been more adamant about this, but I don't personally see people taking large older buildings and going from 3 units to 6 units, because the cost associated with that change, once you go above 4 units, there's a fire suppression and sprinkler requirement that makes it cost prohibitive, and 2 additional units does not offset the cost of the work to do that change. So I don't think this is going to happen, which is an unfortunate thing, that now we've got an ordinance that has some really great things that I think we all could agree on are positive moves forward in our community, that is being bogged down by this concern from the public over something that I don't think is going to be a useful tool. I think that people who have a property that could accommodate that many units are going to say, I'm going to do additional additions to that property, and I'm going to go from 3 units to 10 units, because you have to, once you start investing in the infrastructure inside the building, have enough payback in order to make the project worth it. I have property that I own in this community that have vacant lots associated with it. And when we passed our cottage court ordinance, I was really excited at what that opportunity might bring. But I can tell you that it is not worth it to me to develop an individual unit. It is cheaper for me as an investor to buy a pre-existing unit than it is for me to try to develop something. The only way that that investment works is on a scale, and you have to create, we have a person who has brought a cottage court to us, and that cottage court consists of a large lot, acreage, 10 maybe, and 30 units of housing, and that is viable. But to put 3 units on a vacant lot financially doesn't make sense to an investor. They're not going to do it. So I think that you have to be realistic, and there's this concern that's been stoked in this neighborhood, and I just don't think it's founded. I don't want to lose the rest of the ordinance over this item. I'm concerned that if we bring this to council, that council is going to feel exactly the way this board feels, and that we're going to end up in a situation where there's a 50-50 chance that we might see the other items in here go away. So I think we really need to have a heart-to-heart tonight at what we think is the appropriate path forward. Do we send this back to joint committee and have that number amended down to 4, which is what I think is reasonable that people might do by right anyway, because it doesn't trigger all these fire associated costs? Or do we send this forward and risk losing the other good work in here? Counselor Williams?
If we were to send it forward to council and it were to fail, I mean, we're getting close to the end of the year, so it could be brought up in January again. Just
That is correct. Yep. Counselor Haas?
Thank you, Chair. A question for legal. Are we able to just back out this one piece and not create a new version because that matches up to the existing code? So if we don't make this change, we haven't changed anything.
I'm a little confused by your question.
So if we strike the portion associated with that district where it doesn't effectively change anything to the district, would that create a substantive change that it would need to go back through the process?
Yes, the question would be whether the change you want to see would make a material change to the ordinance. So by removing a district or a section, that is a material change to what you've seen, so it would need to go back through the process.
Okay. Thank you. Clarification.
Microphone if you're going to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. We'll keep this going. There's the one other point in this, I mean, the ordinance, it's a shame we have all of this bundled in one ordinance, with the change in the zoning at the latter part of it is great. Other parts of it are great. The other is about the minimum interior side setback that we should consider. And I think certainly based on the 3 to 6 question, I'd love to see that continue to be debated. And if we have to send it back to joint committee, that's what we should do. The other item about the interior setbacks, I wasn't too concerned about it at first until I considered that it was part of the neighborhood business district. And in that district, it might seem appropriate to maintain the 10-foot side setbacks. So I'm certainly 90% for one reason, 10% for another. I would like to see us send it back to joint for more consideration.
Counselor Jones?
Yeah, thank you. I think it should move forward the way it is to council, because remember, this wasn't a city ordinance. This came from a petitioner. I think it should go the way the petitioner wanted it to council, and he can get his vote. I think that's just the better way. He didn't ask for a watered-down version, and unless he comes to us asking for it, I don't think we should be doing it.
Okay. I think that helps clarify for me that we should send this with, even with a no, what would it be if there was a 2-2 vote? Would that be a no recommendation?
That would
or
be, right, so under parliamentary procedure and as mirrored in your rules, if you have a tie on a motion to approve the ordinance or motion to recommend the ordinance, it's effectively, it's a failure to get a majority, but it's also effectively a denial. So it would be not a recommendation to approve going up. And if the council agreed with you and carried that out, they'd be voting yes, and it would deny the ordinance, and it would be gone.
So the mayor has to explain that very well.
I'll be there.
That a yes is a no.
Yes, right.
Okay. Okay, so I want to just outline that this is going to be further complicated because the following ordinance associates with this ordinance. So if this goes to council, we're going to be sending definitions with it to council, and there's going to be some explaining that the mayor will have to do about what needs to happen with that, and he might need to send it back to committee to sit on more time, depending on what happens with this at full council. Does that sound right, Ms. Berner?
Yes, I think with the next ordinance, the companion ordinance to this, there is a third option that you could consider, which is to, I don't think that ordinance is actually necessary at all anymore, because the definitions in it were either removed from the petitioner's ordinance already because they were combined with a staff ordinance, or they relate to charitable gaming facility and gaming position, and adding those definitions to Article 29, and those definitions are already in Article 29.
Okay.
It's just that when the petitioner put the ordinance together, the LD's, the land development code that was posted online still needed to be updated.
Okay, so is it possible to accept it as informational?
I
Is that what we
think
would
the
do?
council has to take an action on it, and I'm looking at the city attorney, but.
Well, we are not there yet, so you have a minute. Okay. Yes, Councilor Jones.
I think what we should be doing is offering the motion in the affirmative. I think that helps the clerk, and then we just vote the way we want to vote. And that would give it clarity for the city clerk.
Okay. Well, we're not having any public comment tonight, so I would be open for a motion if you want to offer it, Councilor Jones.
Yeah, I would do it. To offer it in the affirmative, move to recommend the adoption of ordinance O 2025-15-A.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilor Jones, seconded by Councilor Williams. All in favor? Opposed? And so that is a 2-2 vote. So with that settled, that will go up to council as a tie, and we will let the full council decide. Andrew, Councilor Madison got out of a fun meeting today. Hopefully that's our only tie of the evening. Okay, so item 6, relating to amendments to definitions of the Land Development Code to encourage housing development in Keene, and definitions relating to charitable gaming facilities, ordinance O-2025-17, which we just heard from staff, is now not necessary because the definitions don't relate to anything in its companion ordinance and/or have been already updated in our LDC. So this item, it sounds like we need a determination from the attorney if it needs to have a vote down, if we don't want to adopt it, or if we don't need to adopt it, or if we can accept it as informational at this point. Yes.
So long as we truly don't need any part of it, I think accepting as informational is fine, because it's just solely been a council action, hasn't gone through joint committee or anything like that.
Okay, great. So this is not something that we've held a public hearing on, so I would look to the public to see if there's any comment on this tonight. I don't see anyone jumping up to run to the microphone. Any questions from the committee? Councilor Haas, would you like to make a motion to accept that as informational?
Thank you, Chair. I would move to accept ordinance 2025-17 as informational.
Do I have a second? Motion by Councilor Haas, seconded by Councilor Jones. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, now we're moving along, folks. Next item, relating to setbacks and build to dimensions, ordinance O-2025-20-A. And this is an item that was brought to us by city staff, and we have held a public hearing on as well. We have also, this has gone through joint committee, we've talked about it there. We didn't have any comment at the public portion of the hearing for this. Does anyone have any concerns or questions about this at the committee level right now? No, we're all comfortable? Okay, so I would be open to a motion. Councilor Williams.
We're on number 10?
Wish, we are on number 7.
7, okay. Move to recommend the adoption of ordinance O 2025-20A.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Williams, seconded by Counselor Jones. Any questions on that? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. The next ordinance is relating to definitions for accessory structures, setbacks, and build to dimensions. Ordinance O-2025-21, and this is the companion ordinance for definitions relating back to the ordinance that we just recommended to move forward to council. And Mary, do you want to give us a tune-up on this?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. So this ordinance, as you just noted, is a companion ordinance to the one that you just recommended. And with this one, you may want to consider creating an A version so that the definitions in this ordinance are consistent with the ordinance that you just recommended. If you'll recall, the one that you just voted on, which was ordinance 2025-20A, when the A version was created, some of the wording for the definitions was tweaked. For example, instead of saying any, we changed that to all. We removed the maximum portion from the setbacks. If you want me to go through that in more detail, I can. But all of those changes need to be made to this ordinance to make sure that there's internal consistency in the document with those definitions.
So if we amend this to an A version tonight and then move it forward to council tonight, staff's comfortable that they can update it appropriately?
Yep, it's already been updated, and I did share a red line version with the city clerk's office.
Okay.
I don't know if you all got it. Okay.
We did.
Oh, okay, great. So that red line version shows the changes between the ordinance as it was originally introduced and then what staff is recommending that you change for an A version.
Okay, fantastic. Counselor Jones, you want to give it a try?
I think it's just move to recommend the adoption of ordinance
We
O
have to amend.
2025.
To the red line version in our packet.
Well, by calling it A, that does it, right?
Nope, we have to choose to amend it first.
Yeah.
Okay, then I gotta name the amendments.
Yes, so there's, do you have the recommended motions that includes the language for amending?
No.
I just
Okay.
seen it.
Hold on, I think I emailed it to,
If you could just list them and then we'll say as presented.
okay. So the definitions that would need to be updated to match those contained in ordinance O-2025-20A would be building setback, build to line, build to zone, setback front, setback rear, and side setback.
Do you need us to read that all in, or can we use your record of that list
As presented.
as presented?
I
Yeah,
think you can
perfect.
do it as presented.
Do you want to make that motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Move that we recommend
Move
the
to-
amend, as amended, as presented, ordinance 0-2025-21A.
So I think I would be more comfortable if we made a motion to amend ordinance O-2025-21 to an A version to include the changes to, that Mary has presented.
That's almost what I said. I would move to.
Yes, I knew it was.
I would move to amend ordinance O-2025-21 to amend as presented.
Second. All right, we have a motion by Counselor Jones and a second by Counselor Haas. Any questions? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? All right, so now we have an amended version. Would you
Okay.
like to adopt it?
Now I'd recommend the adoption of O-2025-21A.
Love it. Okay.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Jones, seconded by Counselor Haas. Any questions? All in favor? And that is unanimous. All right. I don't think Mary gets to go anywhere. All right, item number 9, relating to land development code fee updates, ordinance O-2025-25. And this item, we have Mary here, and I believe this is Megan with us, too.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mary Brenner, Senior Planner, and this is Megan Fortson, a planner in the Community Development Department. And she's actually going to be the one presenting this ordinance, and I'm here to help with any questions.
Wonderful. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Megan Fortson, I almost said senior planner. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Yes, so you have proposed ordinance 0-2025-2025, which is relating to the proposed restructuring of the fee schedule in Appendix B of City Code. This is something that the Community Development Department has intended to do for quite a while now, over a year, maybe a year and a half. And what we are proposing to do is not only restructure the layout of this portion of City Code, but also proposing to update some of the fees. So to quickly run through examples of the proposed changes, we are proposing to change our zoning board of adjustment application fees from $100 to $250 to match that of municipalities surrounding us that are similar in size. We are also proposing to add some additional application types for earth excavation permit applications related to permit renewals, major and minor permit amendments applications. And then we are also proposing to adjust our conditional use permit application fees to a $200 flat fee. They now range from $100 to $200. The only one that would be remaining the same is for our telecommunications conditional use permit application, and that's currently $300. We also need to establish a fee for our cottagecore applications, which would be at that $200 rate, and then add in a fee for notice fees for our change of governmental land use notifications. Another big change that we are proposing to make is to change the method of mailed notice that we use to notify abutters of land use applications. Currently, we send all of these letters via certified mail, which right now the current certified mailing rate is $6.04 per abutter. And the city of Keene requires that we notice all property owners within 200 feet of a subject parcel, as well as any professionals with a stamp on a plan, like an engineer, surveyor, architect, as well as the applicant team and any holders of easements. So you can imagine that that adds up very quickly for someone who's submitting an application. So in place of that method of mailed notice, we're looking to move to something called certificate of mailing, and that will comply with the verified mail requirements that are required under state statute, because the post office will basically be certifying that they have received the letters, but it's going to make things less time intensive for staff when sending out the letters, and it's also going to greatly benefit members of the public because it's less expensive, and people receiving the letters do not have to sign for them, which has been, I know, a barrier to some people who have, different working schedules. I believe that that's everything that we are proposing to do for this ordinance. I don't know if, Ms. Brenner, if you want to add anything to that?
Sure. Yeah, just a couple of things. This has been a long time in coming. So we actually did speak to each of the individual boards, I think about a year and a half ago, and did sort of more an in-depth analysis at that time related to the amount of staff time that it takes to review these applications, comparing these to other communities as Megan mentioned, other communities that have similar application types. And so really our intent with this was to try and keep these fees reasonable, but be a little bit more in line with current practice and kind of relieving some of that burden on the general tax fund, if you will, and having a little bit more of the cost covered by the application fee itself. And so, for example, like right now, the earth excavation application fee is only $50. If we were to add up all of our staff time spent on the one earth excavation application that we've received, it'd probably be around like tens of thousands of dollars. And I know that when we put it out, just getting the third-party review has added up to about $30,000 for that application alone. So we understand like the application fee, if we tried to have it actually cover all of the costs, it'd be cost prohibitive. So we're not trying to do that, but we just want to help a little bit. So that's where those application fee changes are coming in. One thing that has come to our attention recently that I don't know if this council will want to talk about it or consider it, it's not in this ordinance, is that we've started hearing recently from people who have received notice that they're just barely getting it in time. And I think, oh yeah, you all heard that the other night. And so that I think is a little bit concerning. And in this most recent instance, it was a first-class mailing that went out. And so it wouldn't have had the same delaying effect that, you know, having to sign for the letter or go to the post office if you missed it. And that we verified that the letters were sent out a full 10 days ahead of the hearing. And so some potential things that the council might want to consider, or you could consider, is requiring on-site posting. We do that for some applications types right now, but not all of them. And we just have signs up in the community development department. We set them up for the applicant. The applicant comes and picks them up and puts them out at their property. That way it's something that's visible and people can kind of like see it. That's an option. Another thing that some communities do is they will notice not just the property owners, but you know, given the fact that we have a lot of renters in our community, we're relying on the property owner to then communicate information back to their tenants if they have them. Or we could just require a direct mailing to the actual residents of the abutting properties. So that's not in this ordinance. That would be a change from our practice today. But given the fact that since the time we introduced this ordinance to now, we've started to hear of these issues, we just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Great, yes, I do. I was thinking about that when obviously we're coming off from that meeting on Monday night, where we heard from a lot of people that the day before the meeting or 2 days before the meeting, and they didn't have time to prepare or make arrangements to be there, was difficult. And so I think it is something that we need to consider moving forward. My only question, I don't have any problems with any of these. I think that I had noticed that we had inconsistencies in our fee schedules in previous time, and I knew this was coming because I'd asked the question, so I'm happy to see it. I like things super simple. I would have loved to have seen this this table redlined, just so I could see what the old fees were and make sure that you guys are charging enough too. You know, like, I don't know where we started to know what the changes were necessarily. So maybe next time for future committees, just give them information so they can help you.
Yes. Madam Chair, sorry, really quickly. Did you receive, was there a narrative that went with that ordinance?
There is a narrative, and that's where I can see what the new fees will be.
Got it,
One
okay.
says there's what the change is, but most of them say just what the new fee is.
And Madam Chair, may I clarify? So Appendix B, the Chapter 100 section of Appendix B, I'll call it, where all of the land development code fees are outlined. Right now, it's not a table or anything like that. It's just a list of fees that's rather not really structured very well. So we should have provided a redlined version, but this was our attempt at providing some more structure to where there is currently no structure.
No, any structure is great.
Under that section of the code.
Okay, not to belabor that, just a note.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have any questions? Yes, Councilor Haas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we know how our fees compare to neighboring towns, especially Swansea, for instance?
Did we look at Swansea? I don't know if we looked at Swansea.
I don't know that we looked at Swansea in particular, but we did do an analysis. I mean, just to give you an idea, so the HDC, the Historic District Commission, they adopted their fee updates in August of 2024, and then for the Planning Board and the Zoning Board, each of those respective boards adopted them in April of last year, 2024. And we tried to look at municipalities that were similar in size, so obviously we're quite large compared to Swansea, but I know that, for example, Lebanon, they charge $150 for an application, so right now, or for a variance application, we charge $100 right now. When you go up to larger municipalities, like a Manchester or a Nashua, they're charging $900 for a single application, and that doesn't include the cost of the legal ad fee that has to be run in the local paper or the cost of noticing abutters. So our costs are very, very low compared to municipalities of comparable sizes to Keene.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Jones?
First thing I want to ask of staff is, should this pass tonight, when it goes to the city council in the packet, could you include this narrative? Because I think that would help the councilors. And if I may, can I ask the city manager a question?
Of course.
These are all what I would call user fees, and this is all revenue that goes back to the fourth floor. Correct or not?
Goes into the
General
sidewalk
fund. It's general fund
It goes into
revenue.
general fund?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Williams?
Thank you. I just want to say that I'm alarmed by what you said about the mail, and that U.S. Postal Service, I guess, isn't as reliable as it was, because another thing I heard today was a resident of Keene tell me that they hadn't received their mail in 3 days. So is this a problem that we're really going to have to face now? And how is this going to affect us? I'm worried about that, so.
I mean, that's not the conversation that is before us, but I have experienced days where at my office, my business office, I've not had a post person come. So, yes, Counselor Haas?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. For council next week, could you provide a red line version? I'll build on what Councilor Jones asked, but to me, it really helps seeing the changes like that.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Great.
Can
Okay.
I ask, sorry, on that note, so the reason why we didn't is because we basically struck the whole section and added a new one in, and I didn't want to.
Confuse it?
Yeah, I didn't want to make it seem like we're doing something that we're not. So I just wanted to check to make sure that that is okay to format it that way.
So are you suggesting, like, because it's a new section, you would put the old number and strike it, and then put the new number in just for visual aid? Would that be okay?
That's okay?
Yeah.
All right,
And then
yes, we can definitely do
I just
that.
have a kind of a question to make sure I'm understanding this all correctly. Basically, what you're saying is this is such a new structure that if it were redlined like in Microsoft Word, the entire thing would be red.
And replaced with the, the table that's
So
there.
it's not like minor changes, it's like the whole.
Right.
But we
format's
could
red.
manually go in and put a strike through of the
Yes.
old number and, yes.
So a compromised red line. Great. And that's just for visual aid for us old people. All right, so do we have anyone from the public wishing to speak on this? It doesn't look like we do. I would be open for a motion. I think we're back to you, Counselor Haas.
Move to recommend adoption of ordinance 0202525.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Haas, seconded by Counselor Jones. Any questions? All in favor? And that's unanimous. Last item, guys. We might be out of here before 9. Nope, I think we got to the last one. Relating to Land Development Code Application Procedure Ordinance O-2025-26. And are you guys our team for this one too? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Megan Fortson, planner again. So I don't know if you could really call this a companion ordinance, but it is very much a companion to O-2025-25 in the sense that all of the fees that are being added or modified very much are interconnected to this section of the Land Development Code. So we're proposing to amend sections of Article 26, which outline all of the application procedures for our land use applications. The biggest changes, I would say, are proposed to 2 tables at the beginning of the article. There's Table 26-1, which outlines the various application types and the review authority responsible for reviewing those applications. So we've gone in the sections related to amendments to the Land Development Code and just had to update some sections to what would you say, like align with the planning board regulations. For example, our earth excavation regulations weren't listed as being under the purview of the planning board, so going in and making that correction. We've also had to go in and add some new zoning application types because the city now offers a floodplain variance option and a written interpretation for our zoning administrator. And then we've gone in and cleaned up our list of conditional use permits, added the additional earth excavation permit application types that I had mentioned as part of the previous presentation, and then added some additional permits, permit types for our street access permit applications, which are basically driveways. And then we are adding that additional application type, which I mentioned before. It's called a change of governmental land use, and that's just basically oftentimes used by our public works department when there's a city project that's going to be happening and they need a lay down area for construction materials. So a good example is the Island Street project. They use a property, I think that's owned by Eversource, and they go before the planning board for review and comment. So now we're going to have an actual application procedure section in Article 26 that will outline that process. Same thing applies to Table 26-2 for our public notice requirements. It goes through each of those same application types and basically will tell you what type of notice is required in terms of a legal ad, mailed notice, if there's on-site posted notice required, and what the number of days of notice are required prior to the meeting. And then to quickly just go through the other changes that are proposed to this section. Currently, a number of our sections under their submittal requirements say that you have to provide application fees as set forth in Appendix B of the City Code of Ordinances and certified mailing. So we're proposing to just strike that out and just say mailed notice, so that in the future, should we need to change the method of mailed notice, we can change that just in Appendix B of City Code and not have to alter all of these sections of the Land Development Code. I think those are pretty much all of the changes that are proposed as part of that section. I don't know if you'd like to clarify anything, Mary?
Yep. Go ahead.
My only comment, which and it's getting late, so hopefully I'm not missing anything. When I was scrolling through this earlier today, I just noticed there's a weird inconsistency in the bullet size. And it bothered me.
Some of them are bolded.
But there's some bolded baby bullets. So it's a silly thing, but like, do you see it in the LDC pages?
Oh, in the LDC pages, like in the LDC mock-up pages?
Yes.
I don't have that open right now, but I can chastise Evan for you, who did this.
Well, we need to talk.
Oh,
to
you're
Evan.
right. Those
He
are
used some very
Oh,
inadequate.
yeah, look at that. Yeah, we'll fix that. Oh, no, I'm gonna chastise him.
Such a silly thing to care about. But anyway, I just thought I'd make it light here at the end. All right, does anyone have any questions? Yes, Counselor Haas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, so much for lightness. Table 26-1, the revisions that you show. Great presentation of the table and explanation of the revisions here and the reviews. There's a couple points that bother me, and this may take us back to an amendment. Just I'm going to put it out for your comment. I see one under floodplain development.
Can you tell us where you're looking so I can follow along?
I am on page 79 of the packet.
Okay.
Okay. So on floodplain development, we are leaving the decision to the floodplain administrator. That strikes me as something that's a little more serious than to have it on one person. Indeed, if I was any one person, I wouldn't want to be making a single decision without having someone else involved. Ideally, since I am dedicated to flood management, I'd like to see that reviewed by the city engineer and then also come up to either to our committee or to council as would be appropriate. There any thoughts on that? Anytime I see a single point of approval, I'm troubled by it, unless it's something,
Is there
particularly minor.
something legislatively that was a reason that we made that decision?
So I'm not I wish Mike Hagan were still here because he
I
was our
was just thinking,
floodplain,
yeah.
our certified floodplain manager. And so he did have to go through quite a bit of training and I think got the floodplain manager certification only within the last couple years. But he has been doing this for years and it is a technical review. And I believe that there is now that process for relief to go to the zoning board if there's any issues that the applicant has and they want to require or they want to ask for relief from the regulations. I don't think that that is a process where it really makes sense for it to go to city council, if I'm being honest, because it's purely, it's a math exercise.
How might we build, how might we build in another layer of review on something that's pretty serious as far as making a judgment on a floodplain issue, as well as the fact that any approval by a single point is fragile.
Yes, Megan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to provide a little bit of background information, so a good example is the new U-Haul facility over on Winchester Street. They had quite an extensive floodplain review process that they had to go through, I think including some actual like amendments that went through FEMA themselves. But before any applicant or developer can get a floodplain, or can get a building permit rather, they have to go through the floodplain development permit, and they are required to submit materials that have been prepared by a licensed engineer in the state of New Hampshire. So there is someone who has to provide that background. And Mr. Hagan is not only reviewing the floodplain development permit, but also the building permit application. So there is a thorough analysis that's done. We have people putting their professional licenses on the line when this information is submitted to certify the accuracy of the materials.
Great.
I don't know how the minute taker will resolve that. I hear what you say. I accept that those are all good controls to have in place. I'm always going to be alert to single points of approvals. Oh, I still had another one.
Okay, one more.
That was one more. I have two more. I have one more.
Choose
one
your
more. Historic district review
What page are
for a
we?
major project, page 78.
Okay.
Okay, right now, for minor projects, not worried about that, trim and things. Major projects, I'm sorry, I didn't look up what categorized something as a major project, but we're leaving the decision to the Historic District Commission. Oh, I take that back. That's not a change. So I will address that separately. Sorry.
All right, well, then you get one more, Councilor Ross.
I'm done.
Okay. How about this side of the table? No? Okay. Do we have anyone from the public wishing to make a comment on this? Seeing none, I'm ready for a motion. Councilor Williams? Number 10, please.
Move to recommend the adoption of ordinance O 2025-26.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Williams, seconded by Councilor Jones. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is unanimous. Well, we did it with 15 minutes to spare, everybody. Thank you all for making it through tonight. I know that was a long one. And at 8:44, I'm going to say that this meeting is adjourned.